You're one of the tribes looking to find your identity by traveling around far lands and expanding your settlements into 5 different regions in Iwari. Welcome to Tangermouse Studio D. I'm Kevin Delp. Today we're looking at Iwari. It is a 2 to 5 player Euro-style area control game by ThunderGryph Games. It'll be on Kickstarter at the beginning of March. But let's first look at those prototype components. There's a double-sided game board, scoreboard, cards, tokens, totems, and more. Here's a quick overview of Iwari. During the game, players will be placing out their tents and totems on the game board. When the deck runs out the first time, there's a tent scoring round. When the deck runs out a second time, players are going to be moving into final scoring. Let's look at how to play the game. Each player begins the game with their tents and totems and 3 random cards. On your turn, you can either play up to 3 cards or discard 1 card and draw a new card. To play a piece on the board, you play a card that matches the territory, or you can play 2 of the same color cards that act as a wild, and you can place a piece. On a turn, you can only play in a single territory. If you want to play in an unexplored territory, then the only thing you can do is play a tent. Once a tent is in a territory, then players can play up to 2 pieces in a territory. So you could place a tent and a totem, for example. But the total number of totems in a territory is determined by the number of tents that has majority control. So here, a maximum of 2 totems can be present since red has the majority with 2 tents. Of course, as majorities change, then more totems could be placed. When the deck runs out the first time, there's a tent scoring round. For tent scoring, you look at each territory and see who has majority control. That person receives 1 point for each tent in the territory. So yellow would receive 5 points here. Second place looks at the number of tents the first player had for their points, so blue would get 3 points. If there was a third place, then they would look at the second place, and so on. If there's ever a tie, then those players share majority, so yellow and green both get 4 points here. After the tent scoring round, players will continue to place out their tents and totems on the board until the deck runs out another time, and then they'll move into final scoring. Now you'll do tent scoring again, and you also get points for 4 or more sequential tents along the road. 1 point for each one connected. So red would get 5 points here. Then players score their totems. You'll start at connection 1 on the board and look at the 2 neighboring territories. If a player has majority in both areas, then that player will score points equal to the total number of totems. So if green has majority here and here, then count the total of totems and give that green player 6 points. If players are tied, then they both have majority, so here blue and yellow get 4 points each. And the person with the most points is the winner. Now the game says it plays in about 45 minutes, and I say that's right for probably 4 players. It probably plays a little bit faster with less players because more cards are taken out of the deck, and there are more mountain areas in the game. Let's talk about those. The mountain areas are placed out at the beginning of the game and block the connection between 2 territories for totem scoring. No scoring happens there. With 2 players, there are 4 block connections, but with 5, there's only 1 block connection. I was able to play both sides of the board. One side has a lot of territories that are small. The other side has fewer territories, but they're bigger. And it felt to me that the side with the bigger territories had a little bit more player interaction, which I think you want in an area control game. The smaller territory side, it felt like by the time 1 or 2 players placed their tents in an area, it was all filled up, and a third player, there was no room for them in that territory. But you can make some big plays on your turn by playing 2 tents in a territory or a tent and a totem if you have the right cards. So having 2 of a kind can be pretty important, especially if someone just explored a new territory. The choices are interesting. Do I place tents or totems or a combination of those? Or even where do I place my tents and totems on the game board? Trying to gain control or majority in the middle of the game board I found was extremely helpful to try to make other connections on the board. And once a territory is filled with tents, then no more tents can be played in that territory. So sometimes a strategic move is to place your tent in a spot to tie for majority or even block someone else from placing in that territory. That will then limit the number of totems that can be placed in the territory, since that number is determined by the number of tents held by the majority player. Now you'll get a few points from your tents during the tent scoring round in the middle of the game, but you're going to get a lot of points at the end of the game with all those totem connection scorings. One side of the board has 18 different connections for the totems, and the other side has like 25 connections. But you can't forget about the tents again, and even connecting the tents together. If you have 4 or more, you'll get points that way. I was too focused in one game and just really focused on totems, and I lost by 1 point because I was not paying attention to my tents as well. The illustrations on the card are stunning, with the different regions and even the small people that you can see. ThunderGryph Games does a great job on their published games. What you see here are just prototype components, but the renderings for the finished pieces look pretty cool for those totems and tents. So if you enjoy area control type games and this sounds like something you would enjoy, then check out Iwari from ThunderGryph Games on Kickstarter, and we'd love for you to subscribe to Tantrum House.